Well, I'm stepping away from coaching, not
Yeah.
because I don't enjoy it, just because I'm glued to my laptop every day and it's such a bind, and I prefer the freedom, we're all freedom mad.
Yes.
So as much as I love the topic and the psychology behind it and helping people and getting the results that I did, I just don't want to be glued to my laptop anymore. But in terms of helping corporations, like you've mentioned, to me, it's going to be one of two ways. It'll either be on stage talking through my journey and explaining the impact and the cost of silence and the consequences of the cost of silence, or it'll be running a workshop where it's very engaging. I'll be giving them different exercises to highlight their own, where they're actually holding themselves back, and everybody's cost of silence will be different. For some people, it might be hindering their progression in their career because they're not speaking up enough, they're not being assertive enough, they're not putting their views across enough, and they're not being seen enough, basically. For other people, the cost of silence might be they're in a very coercively controlled relationship that they now need to break away from. Somebody else, it might be they're a survivor of PTSD from being in war or something, or like an army man or whatever. Everybody's story could be hugely different, but the impact is, the psychology behind the cost of silence is the same. But from a business perspective, it's more around how people then hold themselves back, that stop people working together as easily, people stop sharing information, people burn out because they're not sharing how burnt out they are. They go home, they work weekends and evenings. Maybe they've got a difficult team member and they're not speaking up about them, and they're getting really stressed and they're thinking of leaving the team or whatever it might be. Maybe somebody isn't delivering, but they're not speaking to them about it. And the stress that person will carry. I've seen it with my clients, like the worry that they have around having this one conversation, and the freedom that they have when they finally have that. And once you have a team that can communicate well, business is so much easier. So that's how it fits into a business perspective. But personally, I'm more emotionally attached to the people that have real deep issues with this cost of silence, rather than it just being a corporate issue.
Yeah.
It plays into that area, but people that anybody that's being suicidal is suffering with the cost of silence. Anybody that is self-harming is suffering with the cost of silence.
Yeah.
Anybody that could probably do with some professional help but isn't taking it is dealing with the cost of silence, or they're using other things like escapism, drugs, smoking, drinking, whatever it might be.
That's massive. Like you say, it's the consequences, isn't it? It's huge, and I don't think people realise it is because of the silence. And I don't think
it's
they
the
realise.
silence. But then what does the silence trigger? It's the shame, because you're
Right.
only silent about something that you're shameful of.
Okay.
You're not silent about the fact that you own the gigs group.
No.
You're not silent around the fact that you've got a green shirt on, like whatever, because you're
Do
not.
you like it?
Yeah, it's all right, it's all right. I'm not really possibly into shirts, but
We're
whatever.
green today. Look, we're matching. But no, you're
I was
right.
picking it
It's
up
a
on-
shame
it's the
thing.
shame, because the silence causes the shame, and it's the shame that erodes them from the inside, and that's the part that people aren't even aware of. That's the unconscious part, the shame that starts building and eroding them and grows over time if it isn't looked into. But the shame of not speaking up about a team member, the shame is this big. It's uncomfortable, it's inconvenient, it's not ideal, but it's not a deal breaker. The shame of something that you feel that if people know about this, it will change how they view me for the rest of their lives. That's a big burden to carry. That's a huge amount of shame. And the more you hide it, the more you're effectively communicating with yourself, not necessarily directly in words, but the implications that you're telling yourself are, this part of me is so shameful, nobody can know about it. And if anybody knows about it, it will be bad. It's a bad thing for people to know about. And that's the part that does the damage. And the silence is the symptom of the shame, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. Yeah. And again, like I said, it's a really, because you're working your way back from something that doesn't seem too much, but actually it makes sense when you kind of go through those layers.
Break it down.
Yeah, it does. It really does. I'm kind of going back to assertiveness, because I think there's a common misconception in our industry that people feel it's conflict.
God,
We worked on this.
We did, yeah. It's a very common human belief. Assertiveness does not mean conflict. In fact, assertiveness in my books means conflict resolution.
Yeah.
It's speaking your
It's a
truth and what you want.
perception,
It's
isn't it?
totally different. But most people think, yeah, I'm assertive. I told my wife she was fat and she needed to get on I was like, that's not assertive, that's cruel.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between assertive and speaking your truth. But your truth isn't then to tell somebody what they are and what they're doing. It's your truth is the consequence of what they're doing and how you react to it.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you can ever speak with certainty around, with 100% truth, is how you're interpreting it and how you feel about it.
Yeah, because it's really that sentence that you used earlier about your feelings or your observations. Just remind me of
Interpretations.
Your interpretations is a really good way of beginning that process in a conversation. And obviously, you've been through some challenges and building your own business and personal brand. But what would you say has been the toughest challenge?
I think the toughest challenge for me, in terms of building my own business, and
or personal brand,
sure.
Both, I suppose.
I think one of the reasons why I've stepped away from LinkedIn more is because, and I can even name the month that this happened, but August 2024, I got a phone call on the Friday at 3:00 when I was due in Crown Court on Monday to say it'd been postponed by 9 months, and I've been waiting 5 years at this point, just shy of 5 years. And then I had to wait another 9 months, and even then it could easily be knocked on, and I just didn't have any more to give. I was just so broken from everything, and the imbalance between the way that he was being treated, the way I was being treated, what he was allowed access to, what I wasn't allowed access to, it was infuriating, but regardless. And at that point, I was just so desperate to be rid of this thing from my life. It came to the closest of me pulling out of the system, but long story short, it didn't. In terms of my biggest challenge, it was dealing with that and maintaining a business when everybody was hailing me a hero and, oh, you're so strong and you're a confidence coach and you're an assertiveness coach, and yet I'm talking here around speaking up, and I was the most suppressed out of everybody that I knew because I couldn't talk about this thing. But I couldn't bring myself to take a selfie with a smile on it for a social media post. So I was dragging up old pictures from 2 years ago, 1 year ago. I was taking professional pictures from a photo shoot, and I stopped posting around my story and my life or whatever I might have been up to. I was just making it educational. 3 ways to beat procrastination, 3 ways to stop, I don't know, people pleasing, or just boring stuff that I thought was boring, just because I couldn't share what was really going on. And I just realised at that moment how utterly artificial and fickle this world that we're living in social media. And yet I still go on social media, but I insist that if I'm going to do it now, I'm going to be this version of me. But at the time, people saw me this really together.
You owe it, don't you?
And I was really together. I was emotionally grounded, but I was dealing with something that very few people have to deal with. Childhood trauma. I didn't even know a first thing about it, but I was dealing with that.
Yeah.
I was having PTSD attacks, never had that before. I was having flashbacks, stuff I'd never had that before. They were happening to me in Tesco's aisles, where I was literally started throwing up in the aisle because I was having this huge PTSD attack. And then I come back on LinkedIn and everybody's like, oh, Angie, you're doing great. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't do it.
Yeah.
It's so false. It's so fickle. It's not who I am. So I started having to disengage from this fake world of this is the branding and this is how I want everybody to see me, because like, I want you to see me of who I am, and I can't. So the hardest part for me was dealing with all of that shit
massively,
and maintaining this really confident, really bouncy, really no water off my back, which it was for a long time. That was the truth. It wasn't like I was faking that part of me, but this was the most difficult period of my life, and I couldn't even talk about it, and yet I had to maintain the previous image, and I couldn't even say what was actually really happening. And I would say things like, I'm having a difficult time, I've got some personal things going on, but people thought, oh yeah, she's got a spot on her nose or something. I don't know, like probably something really shallow.
Yeah, they wouldn't.
Actually, they had nobody had any conception apart from my family how bad it was.
Yeah.
You know, I'd never had a panic attack ever, apart from when I was about 10 or something, when I got thrown into a swimming pool when I wasn't ready to do it. But the stuff that I was dealing with, I remember one, for example, it's been totally vulnerable here, but I started having a panic. I was crying. I was in my parents' living room. I was just there with my mum. I started crying. It got too much. I started having this panic attack. But when I started doing it, my neck was closing up. So I was like gasping for air, and it completely closed. And I thought, holy shit, I'm going to die.
God.
I cannot breathe. I cannot get any air in my lungs.
Which only makes you panic even more.
Makes you panic even more, exactly. So everything was heightened. And thank God my mum's a therapist, and she's very good at dealing with these things. She was clearly very distressed. But then she was kneeling next to me on the floor, just saying, Angie, calm, breathe. And then she started crying, which then made me more panicky again.
Oh my God.
And it was all very dramatic, and it's not the best story of my life, but what I'm saying is, like, this stuff, I hadn't dealt with at age 16, and it was now coming out of me.
Coming out of you, yeah.
And I didn't even know a first thing
Your
about
body
this
carries
stuff.
emotions.
The body holds the score, right?
Yeah.
So this is the life I was leading in August 2024. And I remember making a post saying, I've had some really shit news and I'm going out in my van and I'm just going to travel around the UK. And that was me breaking away from it. That shit news was this. But when everybody thought, oh, you're living the life of freedom and you're going to have a whale of a time and you're going to go around the country in your van. No, I was on my parents' living room floor having panic attacks. That was the life I was leading. And yet there I was on LinkedIn the next day going, three ways to do it. I was like,
Jesus Christ.
I was like, I can't live like this.
I think a lot of people would resonate with that.
Well, this is the thing, because I've
like
been more open about it.
Bit.
I've had people come to me and going, I'm so glad you said that, because last week I had to just take an old post from 5 years ago and hit copy paste because couldn't sleep because of this thing happened, or I couldn't do this thing. And it's actually really common. And this is the part I hate about social media.
I hate that as well.